In a quiet neighborhood in South Florida, a couple grew tomatoes, peppers, and kale in their front yard for 17 years. No complaints from neighbors, no warnings from the city. Then, without any change in how they gardened, a letter arrived that would end it all. Their names were Hermine Ricketts and Tom Carroll, and their small front yard garden had been part of their daily life since the 1990s. It gave them food. It gave them a routine. It gave them a small piece of independence from the grocery store. Every season they planted, tended, and harvested from that same patch of soil, and for almost 2 decades, nobody in Miami Shores Village seemed to mind. Then, in 2013, the village rewrote its landscaping rules. Front yards still had to have suitable, live plant material. Trees were fine. Ornamental fruit trees were fine. Decorative lawn ornaments were fine. Vegetables, specifically, were not. The new ordinance singled them out by name, as if a pepper plant belonged to a different category of nature than a rosebush. Ricketts and Carroll were told to remove their garden or face fines of $50 a day. $50 a day, every single day, for growing food on land they owned outright. There was no grace period built around the years of quiet coexistence that came before. The clock simply started the moment the new rule took effect, so they made a hard decision. They pulled up the vegetables rather than risk the debt piling up week after week, watching years of soil work disappear in an afternoon. But they didn't stop there. With help from a public interest law firm called the Institute for Justice, they took the village to court, arguing that banning food plants while allowing ornamental ones made no real sense and violated their rights as property owners. It seemed, on the surface, like a case that should be simple to win. A couple who broke no laws for 17 years, suddenly punished for continuing to do exactly what they'd always done. They lost. Not once, but at every level. The trial court sided with the village. The appeals court sided with the village. And when the case reached the Florida Supreme Court, the justices simply declined to hear it. Legally, the door was closed, and a garden that had fed a family for almost 2 decades stayed empty. Here's the part that tends to surprise people the most. One of Florida's appellate courts actually explained its reasoning in writing. The judges stated that it was rational for a local government to ban the cultivation of plants meant to be eaten as part of a meal, while still allowing the same kind of plants to be grown purely for decoration. In other words, a tomato plant grown to look pretty was fine. The exact same tomato plant, grown to be eaten, was not. The plant itself never changed. Only its purpose did, and that purpose alone was enough to make it illegal. That distinction sounds strange the first time you hear it, but it reveals something important about how these disputes actually work. This was never framed as a food safety issue. Nobody claimed the vegetables were dangerous, diseased, or a risk to the neighborhood. The entire case rested on aesthetics, on how the village believed a front yard was supposed to look to anyone walking or driving past it. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If a couple can lose a 17-year garden over how it looks to a passerby, what does that mean for the rest of us? Most homeowners assume that once they own a piece of land, they get to decide what grows on it. That assumption turns out to be legally shaky almost everywhere in the country, and most people never discover this until they're already on the wrong side of it. Zoning codes are written by local governments, and they can regulate land use in ways many owners never expect, right down to the specific plants allowed in a front flower bed. Homeowners associations can go even further, since they operate as private contracts that buyers agree to when they purchase a home, often without reading every clause. 2 completely different sources of authority, 2 different rule books, but from the homeowner's side, the result feels exactly the same. Someone else deciding what you're allowed to grow on land you pay taxes on every year. Miami Shores wasn't an isolated case, either. Years earlier, in Oak Park, Michigan, a woman named Julie Bass ran into a strikingly similar problem. After a sewer repair tore up her front lawn in 2011, she faced a choice: replant plain grass or use the disruption as a chance to try something new. She chose raised vegetable beds instead of grass. The garden was neat, organized, and clearly intentional, not neglected or overgrown. The city disagreed with her landscaping choice anyway. Officials charged her under a code that required suitable, live plant material in front yards, arguing that vegetables simply didn't count as suitable. She faced a misdemeanor charge that could have carried up to 93 days in jail over vegetables planted in her own front yard, on her own property, in raised beds she had built herself. The story spread nationally, drew heavy media attention, and public pressure mounted quickly. The charges were eventually dropped before ever reaching a jury. She was never sentenced, never jailed. But for a while, growing food legally put her in the same legal category as a criminal offense, and the case became a warning sign for anyone who assumed a front yard garden was an obviously harmless thing to plant. 2 different states, 2 different moments within the same broader decade, and yet the pattern repeats almost exactly. A resident grows food. A local code, often built around vague words like suitable or unsightly, gets applied against them. And the underlying justification, every time, comes back to appearance rather than safety. So how did Miami Shores finally end? Not through the courts. The courts had already ruled against the homeowners at every stage, closing off every legal path available to them. It ended through the legislature instead. In 2019, Florida passed what's known as the Vegetable Garden Protection Act, a state law that stops local governments from banning residential vegetable gardens purely for aesthetic reasons. Illinois followed with its own version in 2021, becoming the second state to pass this kind of protection. That might sound like the story wraps up neatly here, but it doesn't. As of the most recent information available, only Florida and Illinois have this kind of statewide protection. Everywhere else, 48 states, the same basic scenario that trapped Ricketts and Carroll could still legally happen again, depending entirely on what your specific city or county decides to write into its zoning code, and there's often no way to know until it's tested. And even in the 2 states that do have protection, there's a catch that a lot of people miss. Florida's law stops cities and counties from banning vegetable gardens. It does not touch homeowners associations. HOAs are private agreements, not government ordinances, so the state law simply doesn't apply to them. A Florida homeowner could be fully protected from their city government and still be restricted by the very community they chose to live in, bound by a contract they signed at closing. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it means winning against one layer of authority doesn't mean you've won against all of them. A city ordinance, a state law, and an HOA covenant are 3 separate systems, each with its own rules, and none of them automatically defers to the others. You could beat one and still lose to the next. The pattern extends beyond vegetables, too. Backyard chickens run into a similar patchwork of restrictions, shaped less by any national standard and more by whatever a particular town decided decades ago. Among the 100 largest cities in the United States, only 3 ban backyard chickens outright: Fort Wayne, Detroit, and Yonkers. That means the overwhelming majority of big American cities actually allow them in some form. But step outside the largest cities and the picture gets far less consistent. In Archdale, North Carolina, a chicken ban that's been on the books for more than 50 years is still in force today, with local reporting noting that violations can carry the possibility of jail time. And this isn't a settled, historical issue tucked safely away in the past. As recently as October 2025, a circuit court judge in Missouri ruled that the state's backyard chicken law was unconstitutional, according to reporting on the case. The legal landscape around what you're allowed to raise, plant, or grow on your own property is still shifting, right now, in real time, with new rulings and new laws still being written. There's something almost ironic sitting underneath all of this, and it's worth simply noticing rather than explaining away. During the Second World War, the federal government actively encouraged Americans to plant so-called victory gardens, turning front lawns, backyards, and even public parks into small food plots as a patriotic act. Millions of families answered that call. Growing your own food back then wasn't just legal. It was celebrated as a contribution to the country. None of this means every American is one letter away from a court date over their tomato plants. Most people who grow a few vegetables or keep a small coop of chickens never run into any trouble at all. The overwhelming majority of towns and cities have no interest in policing a backyard garden, and plenty of neighbors genuinely don't care what grows behind or in front of a fence. But the cases that do happen tend to catch people completely off guard, precisely because almost nobody checks their local zoning code or their HOA bylaws before they start digging. There's also a practical reason interest in home gardening keeps growing regardless of the legal risk. Data cited by CBS News from the National Gardening Association suggests that a modest 600 square foot vegetable garden, costing roughly $70 a year to maintain, can produce around 300 pounds of produce worth close to $600 annually. For a lot of households watching grocery bills climb, that kind of return is exactly why the appeal of growing your own food keeps rising rather than fading. So the tension is real on both sides. On one hand, there's a genuine financial and practical incentive to grow at least some of your own food, especially when a small patch of dirt can quietly offset hundreds of dollars a year at the checkout line. On the other, there's a legal environment that varies wildly depending on where you happen to live, right down to the specific city block or the specific homeowners association you belong to. It's also worth being clear about what this pattern is not. There's no evidence of any coordinated, top-down effort to stop Americans from growing their own food. These cases aren't connected by a shared agenda, and they don't line up neatly along any political divide. They're scattered, local, and usually triggered by a single neighbor's complaint or a routine code review rather than any larger plan. The common thread isn't intention, it's structure. A patchwork of thousands of separate local governments and private associations, each writing its own rules, with almost no coordination between any of them. That structure is exactly why the Miami Shores story matters beyond Miami Shores. It's a clear, documented example of how a rule most homeowners never read can quietly override an assumption most homeowners never think to question. You can own your land outright, pay off your mortgage completely, and still not have the final say over what grows in your own front yard. It also helps to understand how these rules actually get enforced, because it's rarely a city inspector patrolling the streets looking for tomato plants. In most of these documented cases, the process starts with a single complaint. A neighbor calls the code enforcement office, an inspector is sent out to confirm the complaint, and only then does the paperwork begin. That means 2 houses on the same street, growing the exact same vegetables in the exact same way, can end up with completely different outcomes depending on nothing more than whether one neighbor happens to mind and the other doesn't. That's part of what makes this so hard to predict. It isn't really about the plants themselves. It's about whether anyone nearby decides to say something. A garden that sits untouched for 17 years, like the one in Miami Shores, can suddenly become a legal problem the moment a new rule is written or a new complaint is filed, even though nothing about the garden itself has changed at all. For someone thinking about starting a garden, or already keeping one, that uncertainty is exactly why it's worth spending a few minutes checking the actual rules rather than relying on what seems reasonable or what a neighbor happens to be doing. A city ordinance can change with very little public attention. An HOA board can adjust its guidelines from one meeting to the next. And unless you happen to be paying close attention at the right moment, you may not find out until a letter shows up in your own mailbox. If you're curious whether your own city, county, or HOA has rules like these, it's worth actually checking rather than assuming everything is fine. Zoning codes are usually public documents available with a quick search. HOA bylaws are typically included in the paperwork every homeowner signs at closing, but rarely reads closely afterward. For most people, that quiet outdoor space they walk past every day still comes with more restrictions attached to it than they ever realized. If you'd like to explore some helpful resources on this, you'll find them in the description.